All right, so there's only two ways to do print on demand. There's only two ways that actually even make sense to do print on demand. You have the standard way. The standard way is pretty much the basic way that if you watch a basic tutorial on YouTube, you watch any kind of video, it's going to be like this. What do? They do some basic research, if that, because most people don't. And after they do some basic research, they think, okay, I'm going to make a design. Then they'll watch some, YouTube tutorials on how to design, and they'll just copy like a few styles, which there's nothing wrong with, but they'll just create a design. Then they'll post it, and then they do this, 25 times a day, or 100 times a day, or 30 times a day, or whatever. And for the most part, that's kind of the idea that most people do, right? There's, kind of a style of where effectively you're doing everything manually. Then you kind of have a different strategy, which is automation. Now, I'm not saying one or the other is better in this circumstance. That's not my focus today. That's not even the conversation today. However, automation looks a lot different. Automation, instead of you doing the research, you're basically sometimes, depending on what software you use or what kind of situation you're using, you're going to create an infrastructure. So what do I mean by that? You're giving some sort of AI tool, like, for example, ChatGPT, the ability to, let's say you say, you guys know those designs that are like, let's just say born in the, and then, whatever the design, whatever date you want to put here works. So like you could say 80s, right? You could do 70s, you could do 60s, 50s, whatever, right? And then you just start listing them, okay? Or instead of born in, you could say 80s baby, 70s baby, 50s baby, 60s baby. You guys know what I'm talking about. It's like these kind of pumping out hundreds of designs, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 kind of designs, right? I personally use an AI that can do this, that will create a lot more creativity, but this is just another way. At a certain point in time, when you get big enough, sometimes it only makes sense to do automation, because if you have to sit down and research every single design, it's going to take too much time. You got to think, like, there are people with Merch by Amazon accounts, for example, that are able to upload 1,000 products a day. 1,000 products a day is a lot, and it would be impossible for them to sit there and do it manually, right? It just doesn't make sense. So they might have like a script that's added to, for example, like Adobe Illustrator or whatever Adobe tool they use, and they create these kind of things. I never used Adobe for creation of designs, but you get the point, right? So you have these different opportunities, these different ways of working. And in the beginning, I think everybody should do the standard way. You do have to gain some basic research for design, some basic understanding of research. You have to do some basic, I guess you could say, rounds of uploading different platforms. You have to understand the basic stuff, but you do get to a certain point where automation becomes kind of necessary depending on the scenario that you're in. If you have, like I said, if you have a Merch by Amazon account and you can upload, 100 designs a day, why sit there and waste time and then do it manually? Now, I'm not always telling you that you have to do it this way, right? Like that repetitive design style that's like, kind of boring and has a limited chance of success. I'm not saying that, but there are kind of ways around it. And like I said, I've shown this on Design Sensei, the tool that can create designs for you through AI that are unique and different and creative. But really, these, if you think about it, these are the only two ways of creating. Now, we're referring specifically to marketplace print on demand. If you want to talk outside of marketplace print on demand, there's a completely different approach where you have e-com. You're using the e-com model, right? And what is e-com? E-com means e-commerce, meaning I'm going to figure out how to market my product. I'm going to figure out how to list my product. I'm going to figure out who's going to produce my product, right? I should probably make the marker thinner here. But produce my product. I have to figure out all these kind of things. So now I'm not running a print-on-demand business anymore. I'm running a full-scale kind of management firm, if you will, because I'm managing every working part of the business. And part of the reason why people stay away from e-com, especially in the print-on-demand field, is the amount of things that they have to do is a lot less. But once again, where there's more things that you have to do, there's more freedom technically, and more profit margin, less control, and certainly a more stable form of income. If you think about it, you create your own e-commerce store, whether it be a Shopify store, whether it be a WordPress store, or any kind of store that you can fully control, meaning you can advertise, you can choose who comes to the website and who doesn't. You can, write blogs on that website. You can figure out ways to promote that product, right, that's on your website. That is much more safe because, let's face it, there are people who get banned off Redbubble, who get banned off TeePublic, who get banned by Amazon, merch by Amazon. And for some people, depending on how much they make on these platforms, it could be debilitating. They'll make, like, for example, some guy in Syria will make $1,000 a month off of, Redbubble, TeePublic, and he'll lose one of his accounts. That could be half of his money gone. And now all of a sudden he's kind of nervous because he was living good yesterday, and now today he's losing a lot of money, or he lost a lot of money, the potential to make a lot of money, which is a nervous kind of thing. So I think for somebody who's holistic, who wants to make passive income in general, we talk about autopilot passive income, people who want to be able to have control over their own destiny, go with the easy stuff first. Once you get that kind of stuff done, you graduate to next levels. And the whole point is, while you're working on one thing, you have another thing producing you income. So it's kind of like the snowball effect of greater growth over time. So hopefully this video is effective on understanding the different kinds of print on demand that you could do and how to maximize your success. But in a perfect world, I would start off with the standard, gain some basic information, basic knowledge, figure out how to automate, which, by the way, that content is already out there on my YouTube channel. Once you figure out how to automate a system that works for you, then it's time to graduate. If e-commerce is your thing, unless you want to pivot, or print on demand is your thing, you want to pivot, or you don't want to pivot, then you kind of figure out, okay, how do I run my own store? How do I gain control over that? And how do I make a little bit of money? And you also got to think the amount of income that you can make per sale will differ. So here you might make, let's just say, in the case of Redbubble, let's say 25 or 24 cents off of a sticker. I'm using this as an example. If you have fees, that sticker could be, 15 cents, 16 cents, 12 cents. I don't know, right? I don't check the numbers anymore on how much I make per design, but let's say a certain amount. Then when you automate, yes, you might be making the same amount per item, but now you have like 10 times, 100 times more items for sale, which basically increases that real estate space. Okay, so same necessarily profit margin, but just more of what you're doing. So your income generally goes up. And then over here, now you're not making 30 cents a sale, you're making $5 a sale, $10 a sale. Like I said, it depends what item you're selling. Not all items are nearly as profitable, but different products, different niches, different things. So it just depends. And you don't necessarily have to go into e-com. You might go into Etsy first, which does have some more control than these current environments, but not as full control as your own e-commerce store, and then graduate from Etsy to Shopify later and have everything working for you. It's really just a diverse game plan, but the idea is when you go up that ladder, right, you have something working here before you go on to here. And then you go have something working here and go on to here. The thing where I kind of messed up when I was much younger, and I was 18 starting my very first business, I pretty much started right here, which is, building an e-commerce store to start. I had no experience in these kind of areas, which I don't know if it was a mistake, but it was certainly something that forced me to be here for a very, very long period of time. Now, did I gain a lot of knowledge and did I become, let's just say, a formidable force in the e-commerce world? Of course, because I learned things that I had to learn in order to be successful, and especially this was a while ago, long time ago, not a while ago, many, many years ago. So I did learn the necessary things to be able to pretty much do anything. But the point is that your life becomes extremely easy when you start off like this, and you can scale relatively quickly and understand things relatively quickly. And you're kind of taking it piece by piece, but more importantly, you're creating an income for yourself before you move to the next step, the next step, and next step. And then hopefully, whichever step you're in, you're diversifying. So this is your income or your wallet, your bank account, whatever you want to call it, and you have flows, right? So you have Redbubble as a flow, you might have TeePublic as a flow, you might have Amazon as a flow, you might have, Merch by Amazon. Maybe one day you decide to go to FBA. I don't recommend it, but let's just say that's what you decide to do. Maybe you decide to have Adobe Stock as a flow. Maybe you decide from Adobe Stock to go to other places, right? You might decide to do VectEasy. You might decide, different websites. They all differ. But the point is that you have these multiple income sources that are diversified, which is, in my opinion, the most safe approach. All right. So hopefully this video helps you out. If you have questions, leave them in the comments down below. I'll talk to you soon. Peace out. Bye.